It's Monday, December 30th, 2013, and let's talk about what happened this weekend over at xdadevelopers.com. First up, some Android ROM device updates. Shortly after KitKat came out, we saw a deluge of different devices receiving official updates from the manufacturers, and then the unofficial ports started to pour in, and actually now, as it seems, there are more of the long shot ports coming in. And as of this weekend, thanks to the Android ARM v6 group, we now have a version of KitKat available for some very old Galaxy devices, specifically for the Galaxy Ace, Fit, Mini, and Geo. Now these are all devices that were initially released with Android 2.2 and eventually got updates to Android 2.3 before the manufacturer just kind of abandoned them. So it's very cool to see that there are still some people out there that are working hard to make sure that they can try out the latest and greatest on hardware like this. And of course that is one of the key features of KitKat, is that it's supposed to be more friendly toward lower end, older hardware. Now these ports are still to be considered kind of early and alpha, so there are going to be some bugs present. The one that's known about, of course, is the camera not quite working right. And because of the age of the devices, some of these are not going to have a whole lot of built-in storage, so that's going to be a bit of an issue as well. But either way, as I mentioned, these are a bit dated in terms of devices, so it is just kind of cool to see this newer version of Android running on it. It's kind of like seeing it running on the HD2. Moving right along, and speaking of unofficial ports of KitKat to devices, there were 3 such ports that came out this weekend, or maybe a little before the weekend, for the LG Optimus 4X HD. These were done by XDA forum moderator Lawfer Steppenwolf and XDA recognized developers Adam77Root and Demetris, and they are 3 very different beasts there. You've got the Cyanogen Mod 11 port, you have the OmniROM port, and then you have a SlimCat port. And there is one commonality between them all: the camera is still buggy / not working quite right. But again, very cool to see a device like this receiving an unofficial update thanks to some guys in the forum, and this is one of the first Tegra 3 devices that's not received an official update, but has received an update to it. So if you have the Optimus 4X HD, pick your poison. And moving right along, away from Android ports and onto other things, XDA senior member Zach, X-A-A-K, not really sure how to pronounce that, has been very busy in that he has successfully ported HTC Sense 5.0 over to the HTC Pico, or whatever you want to call it. Now it should be mentioned that this could not have been done without Ion kernel thanks to XDA recognized developer Cute Prince, but at this point, Sense 5.0 on the device is considered pretty stable, but it is still sort of in a beta phase as well. There are things like the camera and video recording that don't work quite right on it, and there is a bit of a forced close on the media player, but still, looking at the specs of the device, 600 MHz processor, 512 MB of RAM, and a 3.2-inch screen, it's still very impressive to have something like Sense 5.0 running on top of it, to get blink feed and to get all of the newer features that come with Sense 5, if that's something that you're interested in. As for me, I'm honestly still more of a Nexus guy, and speaking of Nexuses, if you have one of the newer Nexus devices, you may be able to improve the speed of it and the performance and get some better optimizations for it using a couple of tweaks that are now available for Bionic and for the Dalvik VM. Now this is going to require you to be on a Qualcomm-based device and realistically something that's OSP and pretty close to stock, so probably a Nexus device. Specifically, the ones that are targeted in the portal post that talks about this are the Nexus 5, the Nexus 4, and the 2013 Nexus 7. And of those 3 devices, the Nexus 5 and Nexus 7, you're probably not going to need a huge amount of optimization simply because they are very, very powerful devices. So the thread that initially started talking about this was actually posted in the Nexus 4 forum, and from that they talk about how the Code Aurora Foundation has put out a new version of Bionic that is highly optimized for Qualcomm-based devices, and Motorola's Dalvik VM has some specific optimizations that work really well on Nexus devices. And to sort of wrap things up about that, there's an awful lot to be said about Bionic and about Dalvik, so if you want to know more about it, you probably ought to just read the portal post because it's an extremely in-depth article going into why these optimizations are helpful, when you might or might not want to use them, so I really do recommend reading through that rather than me sitting here and parroting it back to you. And moving right along, one of the apps that I end up using an awful lot on any Android device that I touch is Hangouts, because quite frankly I've constantly got messages coming in, being text messages or being Google Talk messages. Well, XDA senior member RSenG2X has created an app that is a Hangouts widget. That's something that Hangouts was been kind of missing up to this point, and essentially it just, like I said, wraps Hangouts in a widget. So you can see your new Hangouts on your home screens. You can resize it and everything. Not really a whole lot to it other than that. And actually looking at some of the comments on the post that went up on Google Plus about this, there are some actual bugs in it at this point. It really only works with new Hangouts. It may be limited in the number of characters you can use in the widget. So it is something that's worth taking a look at, but it should be considered that it is still kind of early. It's not 100%. The developer may actually need some assistance getting it 100% if you'd like to jump into the thread and help out. I'm not sure if it's really going to be all that helpful for me, simply because I do tend to just go into the app and blaze right through it, but for a lot of people, they don't really want to go into an app. They'd rather have a widget for everything, and I can definitely understand that. And the last thing to mention, if you're interested in becoming a developer, XDA senior member Dark Wraith has put together a forum thread that's actually pretty decent in terms of just sort of getting you up to speed on some very beginner, very basic programming things across a wide variety of different programming languages, Java and C++ and Python, things like that. But one way or another, if you have ever been interested in learning a little bit about programming and you want to start somewhere from the very, very ground level, for one, XDA University is probably a good place to start. But additionally, this portal post linking to the forum thread is another great place to get just a little bit of information to kind of kickstart you and push you in the right direction. And you know what? That's going to be about all from me for today. As always, please remember, if you like this video, you can hit that thumbs up button down below. Just lets us know that you like what we're doing here. Subscribe to receive our content as soon as it becomes available. Thank you so much for watching though, and I will see you again probably tomorrow. Bye guys.